All right, and welcome back to another episode of Butler's Babble, where we try and aim to empower, motivate, and inspire you to live the best lives you can possible. And today we've got an amazing guest coming on here today, and this is a little different one than most guests that we have, because most guests have went through stuff in their past and they're gone through it. It's been 20, 30 years or so going through it, and they've actually moved on and they're now telling their stories. Whereas this one, she's ready to tell her story and she's basically just starting life. She's just a youngin' out there, at least compared to us old people out here. But still, her story is amazing. And I'm sure you're going to love her. So we're going to bring her right on instead of listening to me the whole time. So I want to introduce you to our guest, Aubrey Johnston. Aubrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No, we're glad to have you. I know when I saw your story online there, I knew I had to reach out to you and say, hey, would you like to try and come on our show? And I reached out. We did a little pre-interview there, and I knew as soon as we did our interview that you were definitely somebody that I had to bring on here because you have something that I'm sure a lot of people have went through or are going through, and sharing your story is going to help them out. I'm pretty sure. But before we get to all that, why don't we let the viewers get to know you a little bit? So why don't we find out where you're from, where you grew up, your family life, your if you got brothers and sisters, and just get to know you a little bit. Give us a little history of Aubrey.
Yeah, so I am originally from Kansas City. So that's where I grew up. I have an older brother. He's not even 2 years older than me. So right now I'm 24, he's 25, and two loving parents. So it was just us four. We had a great family and we lived in Florida for a few years. But other than that, we were always in Kansas City. And so growing up, I was always a kid that I loved soccer. That was my main thing that I always did. I love sports and I loved hanging out with people. I was always pretty outgoing. And so as high school came up, I was really into extracurriculars. I was also really into tennis as well. And my brother and I were super close. We had a lot of the same friends. So that was super fun. He ended up going to West Point out in New York. He was 2 grades older than me, so when he left, I was super sad, since we were so close, but I was really proud of him because that's a really hard school to get into and go to. Um, yeah, we were always just pretty close as a family. We got to do a lot of fun things, a lot of fun vacations. So, and we lived that, Midwestern life. So that was kind of all I knew until I went to college. Kansas City is a super fun city. It's a lot bigger than people think sometimes. There's actually a lot of fun things to do. Sometimes people are like, did you live with cows? Like, no, I'm from, a metropolitan area. So I love going back. My parents still live there. They really enjoy it. And it's really cool to see people that I grew up with since I did go away for college. I kind of decided to do something outside of the box. And so I knew I was going to say goodbye to a lot of hometown friends, but I do get to go back a lot and definitely have a lot of nostalgia about being younger and not having adult responsibilities. But high school was really cool. And I also um, was a part of a church that we got to travel internationally and do a lot of like service work. So I did get to do travel to Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Brazil, and I also went over to Greece too, to help out with refugees at refugee camps, which was really cool. So I was always really into service work as well, and I was lucky that I got to be a part of an organization that had a lot of opportunities and they had a lot of fundraising opportunities. So that was something I was really into as well.
Definitely. Wow, a lot of stuff out there that it seems like you're the type of person that likes to help out the community whenever you can. And it seems like you started that at an early age, which is really hard to get sometimes with some of the younger ages. And that's really, really good to see because I know I do a lot of charity work myself in this area. So it's very good to give back. And so when going back to schooling, then were you more of like more of an athletic person? Were you more of an academic or were you kind of a bit of both? Or like did you always get good grades? Or were you more into the, gym stuff and things like that, or more into the arts even?
I was, like, pretty crazy about my grades, like, I needed to have good grades. So I was that person, but I also was really into sports. I think I had something maybe competitive about me a little bit, which is what you need for sports, especially. But I think I was just really hard on myself. I've always been really hard on myself. So if I got a bad grade, I would be really upset. So I was pretty into school and into sports. I was never really artistic. I really didn't get into designing or anything like that until later in life, like even later in college when I started my website. So before that, I honestly could never tap into that side of myself. I was creative. I always loved to write and I loved creative writing, but I was never super artistic.
Mhm.
I'm a pretty like logical person, like so that's why I really liked school. And I also was really into Spanish class. I love languages. I loved studying like culture and languages, which is what I ended up also studying in college too. So that was really cool. I was always really interested in like, international travel, which I got to do and learning about that stuff too.
No, that's awesome, and being able to travel into some of the places that you went to at your age, a lot of children don't get to do that, and even a lot of adults don't get to do that. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
all over North America, the Canada and the United States, because I'm here in Canada, and I've been all over, but I've never been outside yet. And I get rasped eyes from people all the time. It's like, oh, you got to go here and there, but there's so much to see back home here too. But for you to be able to get out and do that, that's awesome. I really love that idea, and I wish my daughters were able to do that a little bit too. And one's still young enough; she still might. You never know. Um,
Yeah.
Now you're going back to you're from Kansas City, and I know you lived in Colorado and you're in San Diego now. So going through school, um, was that kind of difficult going from one state to another state and to another? Because you doing this all through school time. Like I don't know when you moved to San Diego. Was that after you graduated high school?
It was after I graduated college. So
Okay, so
I
that
went,
was different.
yeah. So I went to Colorado for college. I went to Colorado State.
Okay,
So it's about 9-hour drive away from Kansas City.
okay.
So it's far, but it's not super far. And then I moved to San Diego after, which is really far. Like
Okay, so
you
your
can't
whole high
drive.
school and junior high, that was all in Kansas City then?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't have to move around there. So you're in there, and did you, know right away what you wanted to do with your life? Because it seems like with all the traveling and the helping out with things, and that it almost sounds like you were going in that direction to do something that was gonna help people.
Yeah, so I had a lot of ideas. I've never been someone that has one dream job, and I was always really jealous of those people. People that say, "Okay, I really want to be a lawyer," or anything like that. I didn't really have a set path, but I knew that I did really want to travel one day for a job, even though that's kind of hard to come by. And also, I did want to help people, so I did think about joining the Peace Corps or some kind of position like that. I didn't really care a lot about like making a lot of money, if it meant that I got to help people.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, that plan changed a lot with everything else that happened.
Yeah.
And this was also before COVID too, so there was a lot of things that were different too. Um, but I really wanted to do. And I also growing up always thought I would maybe be an author because I love to write. So in a way I wanted to combine those things, but I couldn't always figure out what profession I wanted. Even going into school, I didn't exactly say, oh, like, I know exactly what major I want. I was like, I'm gonna pick a fairly broad major so that I can allow myself to figure it out. I've always been jealous of people that really knew what they wanted to do. I had things I liked, but I didn't have like a job in mind exactly.
Yeah, no, but it's still like at least you had an ambition, which a lot of children don't have at that age. They don't know what they want to do. And I know myself, I didn't figure it out until I was in my 20s what I wanted to do. And so, I mean, it takes a while sometimes. And my one daughter, she's still in her 20s right now. And she's still figuring out what she still wants to do as a career. Whereas my other one's going to be 16 and she knows exactly what she wants to do and things like that. We'll see if it actually pans out. But no, I can understand that. So now you're going through high school. You're definitely getting good grades because you're a really stickler about that. But then you graduate high school, you go to college, you're 19 years old, and that's when things start changing for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I
let's
mean, it
start from the
started
beginning,
off
maybe.
okay, okay. Yeah, it started off totally normal, my parents drove me out to Colorado, dropped me off. I lived in the dorms. I had a great dorm. I was super happy about it. I had really great um dorm mates on my hall. It was awesome. And I rushed a sorority, got a sorority that I really liked. I was meeting so many people, and so this was the first semester of freshman year. I mean, it's everything that you can dream of. Obviously, there's some really hard parts to leaving home, and I definitely was pretty homesick in the beginning. It was difficult. Um, but as I went home for winter break, so winter break starts about mid-December, everything was pretty much fine. But near the end of winter break, when I was kind of getting ready to go back to school, is when I really started to feel sick. And so I woke up in the middle of the night one night. My ear was hurting so bad. And when you just keep waking up and you're like, what is this? And then you go back to sleep. And so I couldn't figure it out. And I was always resistant to go to the doctor back in the day. I would just be sick for like weeks and not do anything. And that's really bad. I don't advise that to anyone, but I just really didn't want to. But my mom said, okay, let's just go to urgent care, see what's going on. So I went to urgent care. They told me that I had an ear infection, which I hadn't had as an adult. A lot of kids get them. But I had never had that as an adult. And also, they said that my lymph nodes were really swollen, especially under my arms, and that I could have mono. And I was also just feeling overall not good, like very tired and everything. So I thought, okay, maybe I do have mono. The mono test was negative. And so I didn't really think much of it. I kind of just went back to school. I got antibiotics. But when I went back, I just kept getting sick over and over again. And it would always be something different, but it was always an infection of some sort, like sinus infections, strep, just being really congested, and I couldn't kind of get rid of it for good. I would take antibiotics and feel a little bit better, and I would drink emergency all the time, take Dayquil, everything. And I couldn't even really have like 2 weeks where I felt good. And I would just go to the university medical center. It's really nice when you're in college because you can just go there and it's usually pretty easy. They would always say I'd been in there so many times,
Hmm.
but everybody says the same thing. Oh my gosh, I got so sick my freshman year. The dorms, you're around all these germs, and the dorms, they're very compact. There's a lot of people in there, and you're eating in a communal food hall too. So I thought, maybe I'm just around a lot of germs all the time.
Sure.
Or I got to the point down the line where I was like, is there a black mold? Like, I just had so many questions, like, where is this coming from? Because the longer it goes on, the more your mind wonders, like, am I allergic to, like, trees in Colorado? Like, all these questions, which none of them actually made sense or, like, were that feasible. But I kinda, like, eventually just called it, like, a mystery illness because it got so bad to where I wouldn't sleep. I would have congestion, like, all in my throat. I would throw up actually, like, every night
Mhm.
because I just had so much mucus in my throat, which is very gross, but life just became miserable.
Were
So
you
that was where I
um
was at.
were you in a room by yourself or were you sharing a room with somebody?
So I was sharing a room with someone, and the rooms were very small. And then
Okay.
we shared a bathroom with two other girls. So it was
Okay.
like two girls, bathroom, two girls. So it was a suite. So I
Okay.
do feel very badly for my roommate at the time because I was just coughing and it was not fun.
Mhm.
I did feel really bad about that.
So, you said you were in a sorority at this time. So it's not like the movies. Like I'm from Canada, we don't have that kind of stuff. So it's not like the movies where you join a sorority and you all go live in a house somewhere and things like that. You're still living in a dorm and things like that. You're not living with your sorority sisters.
You live in the house usually your second year.
Okay.
If you want to, usually you can live all the rest of the years. But freshman year, my school is different. I think I've heard of people that just get in and just move in immediately. I think at some schools, but our school we are required to do the dorms for the first year. And
Mhm.
then after that, you either live in like a sorority house or you just live in off campus housing. So that's kind of like the flow. A lot of people at my school were not in sororities too. It was actually a smaller percentage of my campus. So a lot of people just went and lived in an apartment, but I
Mhm.
ended up living in the sorority the second year.
Yeah. So you're in the dorm, and so this is after Christmas. So you're looking January, February, March in this area, and you're just getting sick every week. You're not wanting to get up even out of bed. Are you calling your parents and letting them know what's going on? Are they like, well, come back home, or are they getting worried themselves? Or
They were definitely worried. I would say my mom worries about me a lot for sure. But I think we all in the beginning were just saying the same thing, like, oh, people just get really sick.
Mhm.
You're probably just exposed to a lot of germs. Like I knew some other people that got sick semi frequently. So I thought, okay, maybe this is normal. Um, but as time went on, my mom was pushing for me to go actually see someone.
Mhm.
But that didn't happen until I was home for the summer in Kansas City.
Okay.
So it took a little bit of time.
And then, but before that, you said that I guess I don't know if you went away for March break or it's when you came back from March break, but then that's when you said you were starting to get more again, like an ear infection and things like that. And that's when you knew that something was really going wrong, correct?
Yeah, I would say it was after spring break. For spring break, I ended up going on a trip with some girls from the sorority. At this point, I was just like used to not feeling good. So I kind of just lived life that way. Like I just still did everything and just never really felt that good. And then, yeah, I got back and it just got worse throughout the rest of the school year. Like, and moving out of my dorm was terrible because I wasn't feeling good and I had so much junk in there for some reason. I had so much stuff and you have to move all of it out. And
Mhm.
I just basically put it all in a storage unit and then just went home for the summer. And I was just going to get all my stuff next year. So it was like a pretty crazy time too.
I can imagine. So when you go home for summer, then you get everything, and when is it that you actually get diagnosed with your illness?
It was in July.
Okay.
So I actually also, after the school year ended, went on a 3.5 week trip to Spain for
Okay.
study abroad.
Okay.
So I didn't get home for like a while.
And were you sick the most of the time there?
Yeah. So the people that I was hanging out with there were asking, like, do you have allergies? Like, what's going on? I went to the pharmacy there. They gave me allergy medication. And then I was just noticing that my piercings would get infected. I still had a nose ring back then, but like it would get really red and I didn't know why. And then like I had like long acrylic nails and like I got a cut on my finger and like my nail got so infected that it literally just fell out of the socket
Okay.
and I just couldn't figure it out. I went with a, professor too, and so she would kinda take me to the pharmacy, and we would try to figure it out, but, I kinda just was still I think I was in denial. I was just
Yeah.
thinking that this was just my life for some reason.
Mhm. Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, well, by this time you're used to it. I mean, you've had it for the whole year basically. You don't think that there's any different. This is being an adult. You start getting illnesses and you start getting sick.
Yeah.
And because to you, you've never known anything else for the last year. So you're studying abroad, you're going through all this. Now, is it because you're getting so sick that that brings you back home, or you just finished your whole studying abroad for that 3 months or whatever it was you were gone, and then you just were coming home at a normal time from the trip?
Yeah, I was just coming home, for the summer, until school started again in August. So I was just coming home for the summer and I would basically go back and babysit. I had a lot of families that I would like dog sit, babysit for. So I would just be hanging out with my parents. Sadly, like my brother didn't get to come home very often. So I would just go back to spend time with my parents.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and that's when my mom started encouraging me that we should try to find answers.
Mhm.
She thought that I was maybe allergic to something, so we went to an allergist, to get me allergy tested.
Okay. And I guess nothing came up on there that you're allergic to anything?
No, but I didn't know anything about doctors back then, and I didn't know that it was also immunology. So it was Kansas City allergy and immunology is where I
Okay.
went, and so I did give blood, and
Yeah.
I just really didn't think much of it, like, and so, but that is how I got diagnosed. So
Okay.
I was very like ignorant to like what this disease was or anything or really anything about the immune system. But basically it's low IgG levels. So
Okay.
they drew the blood, they saw that and they was pretty I think it was pretty like pertinent to them that that's what it was.
Okay. And this was what you called CVID, or Common Variable Immune Deficiency. I'm trying to say it properly.
Yeah, it's
Immunodeficiency.
hard. Yeah, it's hard to say. Um, yeah, so that's what it was, and they called me and told me that, and I I had no idea what was going on.
So for people that aren't familiar with CVID, give us a little background what that kind of is and what it does to your body.
Yeah, so CVID is essentially it's a lack of functioning immune system. So when we're under attack from infections, illnesses, our antibodies fight it off. And so basically, we don't have the proper antibodies to fight it off. So if we get some kind of infection, it can get really, really severe and it's really hard to get rid of, even with antibiotics. So
Okay.
the low IgG or immunoglobulin levels, immunoglobulins and antibodies are synonymous. That's your immune system. So you have very low immunoglobulins. And it can also put you at higher risk for other diseases like autoimmune diseases, which is when your immune system attacks itself, and then
Mhm.
cancers like lymphoma, and then also like lung complications and other kind of complications too.
Mhm.
If someone with CVID is undiagnosed and not receiving treatment, and they come down with diseases like pneumonia or bronchitis, it can get very severe. You could even die if it got bad enough. Luckily, I did
No.
not get either of those things in this time.
No, exactly. Glad that you didn't. And because it makes me think of, and it's just because I'm very ignorant with the disease. I don't know much about it and that. So, but I know back in the 80s when I was watching TV, they used to have shows like a Boy in the Bubble, things like that. And that's what it was. Like he couldn't get exposed to anything on the outside because anything he got, it could kill him, type of thing. So they had him living in this like bubble type of thing. So that's what it's kind of making me feel like. I don't know if it's the same kind of idea that he had, but that was a more extreme case, or is that something
Yeah.
that does happen when they have CVID?
Yeah, I think that's very like an extreme case for sure, but there's different levels of how bad it can be.
Mhm.
I don't really have like a scale of knowledge. I knew that mine was fairly bad, but it wasn't terrible. So some people have it a lot worse to where, they're at large risk when they leave their house. So it definitely varies, but yeah, that's kind of the idea. And it does make people really scared too, when they have it. But when you get treatment, it's a lot better. I essentially, once I got treatment, I was pretty much functioning out in the world like a normal person. It doesn't make you the same as if you didn't have the disease, but when you get treatment, you can kind of replace what's missing and it helps at least.
Definitely. And when you say getting treatment, what kind of treatment are you getting? Is it medication, like oral medication? Is it you have to go into the hospital and get them, almost like someone with cancer having to go in and get chemo type of thing? Is it something that they have to do at the hospital, or do they just give you a prescription and you just got to keep taking it and you'll basically be on this the rest of your life? Or is there a way that they think that they can get it to ever go away? Or
So essentially what I was told um was that I would need immunoglobulin replacement therapy, which is people call it IG, and there's two ways to get that. So essentially what that is getting another person's plasma into your body. And it can
okay.
go in two ways. So intravenously, IV. IVIG. So you go in, usually people that do that do it once a month. And it's similar to when people go in and get chemo, like you're sitting in a comfy chair and someone
Mhm.
comes and puts it in. So you just show up, you sit there, they give you the IV. It's usually longer than the other way, which is subcutaneous, which is essentially you give it to yourself through little needles and tubing, and it goes into your fat. So that's what I've always done. I've actually never done the IV version. They told me that for my lifestyle, since I was in college and I was living in the sorority house, that was just the best option for me because IV can really disrupt your life because you have to go in, you have to make an appointment, and they told me the side effects of IV are a lot worse,
Okay.
and it's a lot of up and down because you're getting it once a month, and so you're really, really low before you get it.
Mhm.
Whereas I started the subcutaneous once a week, so it's less up and down. um, Obviously, there's a lot of caveats to that is that no one likes needles, and stabbing yourself with needles, people will say is a bit barbaric, um, which it is, but
Mhm.
I really had no choice. And so, but once you start doing that after you've been living undiagnosed, your life changes like completely. Like
Yes, I
people
can
say that
imagine.
they get their life back.
Yeah.
Like, I suddenly was feeling better and wasn't sick, like, every day of my life. It was crazy.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you're basically taking your life back, which is really nice. And I know what you mean. It's almost like a diabetic who's got to take needles all the time to make sure that
Yeah.
they're fine. Although they're just doing it in their vein, you got to do it in your fat. So are you doing it in your belly? Are you doing it? Because I know
Yeah.
my wife had a major stroke back in 2007, and when she first got out of the hospital, they were putting on medication for blood thinners. But until the pill version, it takes about 2 weeks to get into your system of taking it constantly. Till it got in, she had to take what was called Lovenox, which is actually a needle also. We had to go to the pharmacy. Luckily, we had a insurance plan at the time because we would have been poor if we didn't. And we had to get, I think, 30 or 60 needles because we had to do it twice a day. I think we had to inject it right into her stomach basically, and
Mhm.
she couldn't do it herself, and I had to do it for her. So I'd actually have to inject it right in, stick it right in, and then just squeeze it slowly in. So is that kind of how you have to do? You just have to go into somewhere in your body where there's a lot of fat, or
Yeah, so I used to also do my thighs, but I don't know why that kind of freaks me out more than my stomach for some reason. I I since I always played soccer, I always kind of had, like, muscular thighs, and this was, like, not that long after that, and so I got scared of, like, hitting something.
Mhm.
But essentially, yeah, so but it's different from an injection in a way of you insert the needle and it stays in for like an hour.
Oh,
So
really?
you have to cover it with adhesive.
Yeah.
So you stab it, it stays in, and then you put adhesive. And you have like 2 to 3 sites. Um, so yeah, so it's a little bit different in that way, but I always do it in my stomach.
Yeah, and you're only doing it once a week, you said. It's not like it's every day type of thing.
Yeah, it's only once a week, but
Okay.
even that is a little too frequent. Now I do it
Yeah.
once every 2 weeks
Okay.
because it was very traumatizing for me
Oh,
in
I
the
can
beginning.
imagine, especially at young age, yes, because I know with my wife, after doing so many we had to do this for about 2 weeks until the other stuff kicked in enough that we could stop doing it, and it actually right there where we were injecting it, we always had to move around a little bit, and it would leave little scar tissue in there and stuff like that. It almost feels like bumps in there and that, so I'm sure,
Yeah,
it's not the most pleasant feeling, I'm sure, so, now
yeah.
after you were diagnosed with this and you're, "Okay, finally I can do this," is that when how far after that were you starting seeing other stuff like your blood counts were low and the swollen lymph nodes and things like when did that start happening?
That started, I want to say it was like at the end of sophomore year. So
Okay.
I started the treatment. Oh, actually, no, I remember now. It was Thanksgiving of sophomore year because I have my, trauma from when all this began. But basically, I thought I was in the clear. I was doing the treatment. Obviously, it wasn't that fun, but I was feeling so much better. Lived in the sorority house, was able to do a lot of different things. And so Thanksgiving, I went back to Kansas City and I saw my doctor again because I still hadn't figured out the whole, in Colorado, it was out of network. I didn't have anyone to go see out there. So I would just wait until I went home to see the same doctor that diagnosed me. And so I went and he was like, "You got your life back." I was so excited. He was like, "You're going to live a long life. You'll get married one day. Like, you'll have kids one day." I was like, "This is great news." And then I gave blood and he called me and said that my white blood cell counts were dangerously low.
Okay.
Um,
Now, does he think this is from the medication itself, or is this just something totally different?
he said that it could be a lot of things. It could be enlarged spleen. It could be oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, can you hear that in the back?
No, not really.
Okay. Sorry, I'll have to cut that part out. There is someone doing like a jackhammer outside, but if you can't hear it, then it's totally fine.
No, that's fine. We don't even have to cut it out. We'll just leave it in.
Okay, sorry.
It's
It
okay.
was really loud. Um, so basically, I got the call that yeah, so I got the call that I had what white blood cells. So I asked him, what does this mean? And he said, you could have an enlarged spleen, worst case scenario, leukemia. I was like,
Not
leukemia?
something
Where
you
did this
want to hear
even
when you're starting to feel better.
No, literally, like, I'm okay, I'm 20 years old, I'm in college, like, when I think leukemia, I think people being really sick and dying,
Yes.
which obviously I don't have a lot of background, like, I hadn't known anybody that had it personally, I just, like, knew, what people know about those kinds of
Mhm.
things, and you hear any type of cancer word and you freak out, and so he told me, that when I get back to Kansas City, so I was gonna go back to college for like the 3 weeks. So
Yep.
Thanksgiving, 3 weeks, winter break. I was gonna see a hematologist in Kansas City.
Okay.
So this 3 weeks was terrible. I've always
Mhm.
been the most anxious person ever since I
Mhm.
was a conscious child. Like, I
Yes.
was just so anxious about everything. And so I was like, do I tell my friends I'm dropping out? Like, am I done? Am I gonna die? Like, crazy stuff, crazy nightmares. And I kind of feel like I just like hid it from people. I don't
Mhm.
know why. I just was like terrible and dying on the inside, but I still wanted to be like this fun
Yeah.
friend and go out and go to parties and be
Plus, that was probably a relief
cool.
for you too, a little bit going out and partying and not thinking about it.
Yeah, just like, "Oh, I'm normal," like and so then I went home and I was told by the hematologist that it was pretty much fine. I was just gonna get an ultrasound of my spleen because
Mhm.
I guess your spleen has a lot to do with white blood cells.
Okay.
And so I got the ultrasound of my spleen. Good news-ish. I have an enlarged spleen.
Okay.
I have no idea why. But we could allocate that that caused that,
Okay.
which was good. I mean, I had been in like a car accident right before I graduated high school. So I said, it wasn't terrible. I had my seatbelt
Yeah.
on, luckily. If I didn't have my seatbelt on,
You might
I
not be
maybe
here.
wouldn't even be here today.
Yeah.
So everybody please wear your seatbelt. But the car landed sideways and the seatbelt really went into me and my organs didn't feel great, but I
Yeah.
didn't have any injuries or anything. So I
No.
said, I also played sports. So I said, I played impact sports. Maybe it was from that.
Mhm.
They really have no explanation.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also a thing that people with CVID have. So I kind of just tried to brush it off and say something caused it, but it's
Yeah.
fine because it explains the blood cells. But
Exactly.
little did I know, this was the beginning of a very long journey because
Mhm.
the cancer scares this was only the beginning. It was
Mhm.
years of low white blood cell, swollen lymph nodes, scans. It's getting worse. I had to get a bone marrow biopsy eventually, lymph node biopsies. So this was a long journey, and
Mm.
to me, this was worse than, like, actually having the disease.
Yes. So you're going through all these procedures, all these surgeries, just trying to figure out what's going on with your body and why it keeps doing this. And you're just trying to live a nice college life. So you're only in college
Yeah,
about a year and a half by this time. And you're not even finished your
yeah,
second year, sophomore year of college yet.
yeah, and then COVID happens, like, 3 months after this. So just, like, this was the darkest time of my
Yeah.
life, and I'm thankful every day that I don't feel this way anymore
Hmm.
because it was absolutely terrible. And with COVID, it's just like, okay, well, like, should I go home? Should I just drop out? Because a lot of people during COVID just said, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore because
Yeah.
why would I go to an out of state school when it's online? And I think a lot of people just left and
Yeah.
just said they were just going to finish it online or at home
Hmm.
and they're not going to come back. And so it was an opportunity if I wanted to do that, but did not want to leave my friends. Like, I was like so stereotypical and did not want to not have a normal life. Like, I wanted to
Yeah.
go back to school when obviously when quarantine was over and everything, like, I was determined.
But I'm sure it's still nerve wracking for you because when COVID starts, here you are with CVID. Yeah, you're going through this other stuff right now too with the low blood counts, but I'm sure you were worried too with CVID. If I get COVID, can this really harm me because my immune system might not be able to fight this off?
Yeah, and that was the issue, was that there's also no real, like, research to go off
Hmm.
of because they were saying that healthy people were getting really sick.
Yeah.
And there was lots of things going around of, like, is it an overreaction of the immune system that was causing people to get so sick?
Hmm.
And I was getting antibodies.
Yeah.
So, were my antibodies from someone that had COVID? And did that, like, work
True.
for me? So, there was a lot of questions, and it was scary. It
Hmm.
was super scary, like,
It's
yeah.
scary enough for
So,
somebody my age. I can imagine somebody who's only 20 years old at the time going through this, 20, 21 years old. It's got to be very
it was
scary.
rough. Yeah. It was rough for a lot of people that I knew too, just
Hmm.
for various reasons. People's parents, like, that had health complications, or people's parents that didn't have health complications and they were winding up in the hospital and then they couldn't talk to them. It was really scary.
Exactly. So, but then eventually, if they're going through all these tests, and you find out you don't have cancer, which is good, but you did find out you did have a lung disease, correct?
Yeah, so
And was
that
this through
this all
COVID
led
at this
me.
time?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. It might have been when it was getting a little bit better. I think it
Okay.
was 2021.
Okay.
Cuz I had these surgeries basically as soon as you could. I mean, obviously you could still have surgery during COVID, but it
Yeah.
was hard to get in.
No,
And
definitely it
so I
was.
was I was having these surgeries, like, as soon as I could, like, during COVID and everything.
Mhm.
And then so I had 2 surgeries to get the lymph nodes out. They said they didn't find cancer in the lymph nodes. And then I found that out, yeah, I wanna say, so that was, it was my junior year.
Okay.
And so they allocated that the lymph nodes kind of were connected, since the lymphocytes are found in the lungs.
Okay.
So when I did the treatment for the lung disease, actually treatment that a lot of lymphoma patients receive, so it treated the lymph nodes.
Okay.
But I didn't have lymphoma that I knew of. I didn't get every single lymph node biopsy. That's the issue. It's like they were in my
Yeah.
stomach. It would have been really invasive to go in there and biopsy those. So there was still kind of a something could be in there. Like, we don't know
Yeah.
exactly why, but luckily the treatment for the lung disease actually treated that. So it kind of just went off the radar, and now it seems a lot better.
Okay. And that was I think you called it what, GLILD. Do you know what that stands for, or is that just
I barely can say it's like granulomatous interstitial. I basically
people
just say
can go look
it's
that
an
up?
interstitial. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
GLILD. There's not even
Good.
like that much online about it. There's
Yeah.
some stuff, but about 25%, I think, CVID patients develop it.
Mhm.
so then, so I see an immunologist and a pulmonologist. And so I was taking a daily medication for that, doing the plasma treatment, and then also getting rituximab, which is like a 7-hour IV that you receive about 3 weeks apart. So it's two separate 7-hour IVs as well.
Wow.
And then the medication goes along with it. So that's what I was doing. I think the last time I completed that was about a year and a half ago. Luckily, I am weaning off the medication,
Good.
so it has gotten a lot better. So that's been really
Yes.
good.
So does it look like that lung disease? Is that something that you treated? It's gone. It can just leave you, or is it something you're going to have basically the rest of your life? You just basically have to learn to live with it.
I don't know if it ever fully goes away, but I've heard of people being in remission for it.
Okay.
So you don't have to treat it anymore, but you have to. I think you end up doing scans about every 6 months, and then you
Okay.
do
To
pulmonary
stay on
function
top of it, type of
tests.
thing.
Yeah, so it could come back. But I think the goal is that it just kind of subsides at one point.
Okay. And CVID, is this something that's very common out there? Or is this actually something that, because up until I met you, I never even heard of it before myself. So I've heard of immune deficiencies and things like that, but not that specific one. Is this a very rare one?
It's pretty rare. So it's funny that it says common variable. Sometimes people with CVID like laugh about that. But basically, it's about 1 in 25,000 to 50,000.
Okay.
So it's pretty rare. It's not like so rare.
Yeah.
But basically, it's under this umbrella of PI, which is
Okay.
primary immunodeficiencies. There's over 450 types,
Hmm.
and CVID is one of them, but they're all rare.
Sure.
Um, so most people haven't heard of it. I don't think there's anyone that I've told about it that has heard of it actually, unless you know somebody. But before I started speaking out about it, I never met someone else that had it.
Okay.
Maybe I came across someone like in the hallway of the
It's
hospital,
probably
but
one of those things like when you you buy a car and you think you got the most unique car. Nobody, I never see these cars anywhere. And then all of a sudden they start popping up everywhere you go. And it's like, well, where'd all these come from? There was none before. It's probably one of those kind of things. You didn't know about it. So you didn't know
yeah.
anything who had it. And then all of a sudden, now that you know about it and you have it, you're starting to see more people come out with it probably. Um,
Mhm.
but no, so when it comes to schooling then, so you did end up going back after COVID and finishing your degree, correct?
Yeah, I did it in 4 years, got cum laude. I was super proud of myself.
Good
There were
for you.
moments of doubt that it was not going to happen
Mhm.
for sure. But I was really determined. At times, I probably pushed myself a lot farther than I should have.
Mhm.
I wasn't always that good about taking care of myself first. I wanted to be like everybody else so badly that, like, sometimes, I'd be really tired and I would just kind of keep going. And, I started, trying to work out a lot more and things like that. And
Mhm.
sometimes I would push it a little too far. Um, so luckily I'm a lot better about that now. But that did lead me to graduate and like show that you can do it, that I didn't need to drop out. I think some people might have been wondering like if I was going to, which would have been fine if I did that too. But I'm glad that I stuck it out.
Exactly. Well, listening to your story from high school, how hard you were on your grades and the kind of mentality you
Yeah.
had, I can't see you not going back. I can see, and it says here too, you graduated in 4 years with a double major in communication studies and in Spanish. So I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
you were doing something that was really easy either. So um, to go through all that and still come out with your degree, I'm proud of you. I think that's awesome. I look up to you for
Thank
that.
you.
And so now you graduate high or college, sorry, and you get your degree. Where do you go from there?
So I ended up getting a job out in California, in San Diego, and I knew I wanted to move somewhere, preferably somewhere that had better weather, because I realized that being sick and it being cold is just bad. And so
Yep.
when I was sick, just it snowing and being cold just made my life terrible. And so I thought, okay, I'm gonna try out somewhere. They need to have a really good healthcare system, like, preferably maybe a good like university healthcare system,
Sure.
and then maybe somewhere warm. Um, So I was thinking, California, Florida, I don't know. I was just even I thought about everything. So I said,
Yeah.
okay, if I get a job somewhere and I like the city and it seems like I can find a good doctor there, I'll go. And so
Yeah.
it really worked out for San Diego because I go to UCSD. One of my doctors in Denver, I would go down to Denver for these appointments. They knew someone at UCSD, and so I got a referral there and I started going there and it was amazing. And so I
Mhm.
just moved out here like 2 weeks after graduation.
Okay.
So I really just did it. I just put my stuff in my car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I drove out with my boyfriend. He wasn't moving yet, but he has a remote job so he could go anywhere.
Okay.
So I
So
said,
that
"Okay,
helps.
I'm just going to go out here." Found roommates and started my job.
Just
It was
start
a
somewhere new with
crazy
nobody.
It was crazy. I mean, I've always been that kind of person that takes risks, and I told myself, "If I come out here and it's terrible and I hate it, I can move back to Kansas City.
Sure.
I can move back to Denver. All my friends live in Denver now.
Yeah.
My boyfriend's
Where
from
was your
Denver.
boyfriend living at this time? Was he still in Denver or
He was still in Fort Collins, so Fort Collins is about hour and a half from Denver, and that's where we went to school.
okay, so you could
And the
always go
rent
back
there
there
is
too.
yeah, the rent there is insanely cheap, like, and he had, like, a great, like, deal, so I was like, "You might as well start your real job and then
Yeah,
live out this rent, and then you can move out
sure.
after that." And so, yeah, so it was scary. I mean, I was just kind of there.
Yeah.
Luckily, I met a lot of people at my job, and there's a lot of people my age living here, and being by the ocean was really helpful.
Mhm.
Since I'm someone that has anxiety, like I find it really calming to live by
Yeah.
the water. So that's really helped. And I've helped like get back in nature a lot
Mhm.
too. And everybody here is pretty chill and really puts emphasis on like taking care of yourself and
Yes.
all those good things. So yeah, so I'm still here now. Fortunately, I was laid off, so I'm looking for my next opportunity right now.
Yeah.
But what's cool is it gives me more time right now to focus on myself,
Sure.
taking care of myself, taking care of my health. I mean, CVID is it's I kind of call it like its own full-time job. And so when you also have a full-time job, you can sometimes just forget about your
Mhm.
health. Like, it's always gonna be there. I'm always gonna have to do my infusions that take all night and then I'm tired. But it's easy to just like keep going. Be like, okay, well,
Mhm.
I have to work and I need to work out and I need to hang out with friends. I need to get out there. I need to meet people, like everything. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. It was super fun opportunity out here. But yeah, so I'm kind of like on the hunt for my next thing. Been trying to think about things that I like.
Yep.
It's hard at this age to know what you wanna do. Everybody asks,
No,
"What do you wanna
exactly. Now
do?"
what
I
kind
don't
of
even know.
with a communications degree though, and with your Spanish, what kind of jobs are like when you say communication studies, what was it kind of that you're studying that you can use towards a job? Is it more like a psychotherapist type stuff when you say how to communicate to people directly or
So there's a few different things. So some focus is on, like, presenting, public speaking.
Mhm.
That was an aspect you learn. A lot of it's writing and written
Yeah,
communication. And then, yeah, there is some psychoanalysis that goes with it too, about people's behaviors. Behavior, it's kind of reminds me of sociology, but it's different.
sure.
I did also like take sociology to kind of, how people interact with each other in different spaces as well, and how to best communicate with people too. It's a lot of different things, and then also like deliberation, like, how to think about things, how to effectively, argue your points.
Mhm.
So you can do a lot of different things. A lot of people
Yeah,
in communications go into sales, which is
yeah.
what I first went into. I've also done a lot of property management and leasing, so I
I'm also
kind of
thinking
dabbled
maybe
in that.
transformation coaching too. You might be really good at something like that, helping people to figure out what they want to do with their life and how to make them go and push for like this is what I want to do and go after their dreams and just like a
That would be
transformational coach
cool.
making their self-help in that because I think with your communication studies, I mean, that would be right up your alley. And there's a lot of coaches right there right now that's a big industry right now is coaching. So I can see you
Yeah.
with everything you've been through. It's not like anybody can say, "Oh, well, I can't do that." And you're like, "Well, listen, this is what I've been through in my life, and I went through 4 years of college while having to suffer with all this stuff, and I got my degrees. So there's nothing you can't do either." And I can see you being able to push somebody to do what they really want to do with their lives. You could probably be a really good coach, I think.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think my issue sometimes is that I really doubt myself. And I always think, like, why would anyone want to listen to me? And I think that's what also has inspired me to get out there and talk about it more because
good for you.
it is really cool. And
Yeah,
like, it's, I've shown myself that, yeah, you can let things stop you, but you don't have to. And I think
no,
sometimes we think that there's expectations of us of like, oh, like I'm really sick. Like I should just be inside. I should just live with my parents forever and they'll take care of me. Like you think that that's what maybe what you should do, but you don't always have to do that.
no,
And that I dreamed something in my head that like I wanted to go out and try something and it wasn't as hard as I made it to be. And I think a lot of
no.
people make things to be a lot harder than they are.
It's
You
very
can
true.
still do it. It's just like my disease makes my life harder, but obviously there's things I can't do. I wanted to live abroad and with my plasma, that was about to be a mess with the insurance
Yeah,
and everything. So that
never
wasn't
say never.
possible.
It's not like you can't do it.
Yeah. You
You're
just
still
kind of
young.
have to be realistic while also doing what you wanna do.
Exactly. Well,
I
I
know that
tell
I can still
people
do anything.
you gotta in life, you can't be afraid to fail because failure is how you learn. So there's something you want to do, you got to go out and go after it and try it. And if you fall down, so what? You just pick yourself up and you try again and you just try putting some things that you learned from that failure or from being knocked down. I shouldn't say failure, but being knocked down, pick yourself up, see what knocked you down, learn from it, and so you can improve on the next one. And same with me with my podcast here. I thought who's going to want to sit here and listen to me, and and I'm not having. It's not like I have celebrities on here. I have everyday people come on here, and I'm like, who's going to want to listen to them? But we've gotten such a good feedback and I learned a lot from you guys that I love doing this, and I'm going to keep doing it whether it's successful or not. I like to think it's successful right now, and we'll keep it going. But yeah, just go on there and do what you want to do, and don't worry about what other people are going to say. If you fail, you fail. You just pick yourself up and do it again. And I can see you I still think I think I can see a lot of people listening to once you tell your story. If you can get up, like you said, and stand in front of a crowd of people and tell them your story, and then what, and they're willing to learn from you. Eventually, these are people that are going to want to learn from you and say, "How did you get through that?" And then mentally, you can train them mentally how you got through it, so they can get through what they want to go through. And so I think you would be a very good speaker and very good coach, and stuff like Toastmasters and things like that. That would help too with speaking and that getting in front of people and being able to speak and stuff, doing stuff like
Yeah.
Toastmasters. So um, now one thing I noticed too is, and we've talked about this before, is like you have your website up there, which we're going to bring up, aubrey.with grace.com. And the one thing I like that you talk about like a lot of stuff like personal growth and you're traveling on there too, and you have food and drink. There's a lot of stuff on there. Why don't you tell them a little bit about your website and I'll bring it up on the screen while you talk about it.
Yeah, so I started it a little over a year ago. I actually was working with clients at my job that owned websites, and I thought,
Okay.
"This is really cool, like, why can't I do this?" So I just blindly went into it. I thought of the domain, because my middle name is Grace, and I just love that word, because I was always so hard on myself and mean to myself, and I knew that I needed to give myself grace, and I think a lot of people do too. And
Yes.
so I kinda started saying that, and so then I talked to, like, my mom and my boyfriend and, like, some other people, like, "Alright, Aubrey with Grace." So, kinda like you said, like, I just when I started off, I was like, "Nobody's gonna read this." Like, I'm gonna get my stuff out there. And it's crazy to see how it's transformed. I just wanted to show people that just because you have a chronic illness doesn't mean that you can't get out there and
Mhm.
do things and live life and that your life has to be terrible. I think in the beginning, it's easy to automatically, after diagnosis, say, this is terrible. My life sucks. This is never going away. And the fact that it's never going away is something that really got me, and something that I've written about too a lot. Um, but I wanted to show that it's not all bad, like,
Yeah.
in that there's ways to find joy, and there's ways to prepare yourself for how your life might be harder than someone else's life, and
Mhm.
that's okay. And especially with invisible illness too. I mean, nobody would know this about me. So I've had a lot of times where I felt very misunderstood. And so I think getting out there and talking about it has been really helpful as well. Because I also give advice on how to open up about it. When I was
Okay.
diagnosed, I didn't have a boyfriend either. I worried very much about getting married one day and somebody having to take care of me in case this took a turn. How do I tell people about this? Does this make me weird? Does this make people not want to be my friend? But I have found a way to talk about it to where I have amazing friendships. I have an amazing relationship. I have amazing relationship with my family about this. And so I've talked a lot about that. So just encouraging people that this isn't terrible. This isn't gonna ruin your life. It's hard, but it gets easier and you have to communicate. You're the only person that can be in charge of this. You have to get out there and tell people what your life is like or they're never gonna know and then you're just gonna create like a rift between you and others.
Definitely. No, and I'm looking through your site here, and there's like a lot of stuff for people to like. I love how you talk about food and drink, what your favorite food and drinking, and you're just getting people to know a bit about you, which is great, and your interests, and then your travel, of course. And I'm sure that's just about you and your traveling that you've done, and um, all that kind of stuff and places you recommend and that. But you also put on there chronic illness, common variable. So you have a place where people can go and find out more about these things, or if they have it, different places they can go or things they can learn about the disease. And what I do like about it was I think it's under your about page here. You talk about what we've been talking about today about how you were diagnosed and everything, but then it says if you or your loved one has an immune deficiency or suspects that you may have one, you can visit the Immune Deficiency Foundation. So you're just sort of drawing people there that listen, if you're not sure if you have it or if you know somebody that you think might have it, check with this place out and they
Mhm.
can help you out. So I think your website is amazing because I love how it helps people out to get to the right thing. And then it's got a let's connect, sign up to be notified about new articles. So I guess you write it as a blog too on here. And so when you have a blog, people can find out and see your full blog and stuff.
Yeah, so yeah, I have the email subscriptions or I'll send things out. When I do podcasts like this, sometimes I'll send out an email that it came out if they wanted to go listen. Um, so yeah, thank you so much. It's been really fun to put it together. And it's been really cool because I've gotten to connect with all kinds of people
Hmm.
who have been really sweet about it, a lot of which they have CVID or they do the same plasma treatment that I do. And I've met, a couple girls that are in college or were diagnosed in college that have almost the same story as me. And it's crazy because for a while, I just didn't, I thought I was the only one going through this for some reason. Like I knew I wasn't, but it felt like I was. So my goal is to make sure that people that are in that position know that they're not alone,
Hmm.
and also that anyone can always email me, message me. I've had people just ask questions like, "My IG levels were low, like, how did you know?" Like, this, that, like, I've talked to a lot of people about that. Obviously, I'm not a medical professional, so people should seek professional help, of
Exactly.
course. But I like to just, when I was going through that, especially with the lymph nodes and the lung disease, I just wanted someone to ask questions to, of like,
Sure.
did you have to do this? Did they tell you this? Did this happen? Like, and it would have helped me a lot because I kind of just feel like I was going into it blindly. And
Exactly. And you got a lot of good articles in here. Like you've got what is GLILD, and I'm looking at it. It's granulomatous and lymphocytic interstitial lung disease. I don't know if I said that right, but I'm probably pretty
it's
close.
pretty good. It's I
And
I
but
still can't even like say it. It's so hard.
But I mean, you have it here. What is it? And then you have your journey of CVID and GLILD, which is great because people can learn about what it's all about and what your journey was like. Anxiety about your medical procedures. It answers a lot of questions people probably do have, and they're afraid to ask out there. They're afraid to tell somebody. So I think it's a great
Mhm.
site. I'm glad to see people reaching out to you and asking for your opinion. Not, and I'm sure they know that you're not a doctor. You can't tell them prescribe things and do things like that. But at least you can give them a background on, well, this is what I know about and what it's how it's affected me and what I've been doing to fix it. So this is what I can do. Maybe you could talk to your doctor or your practitioner about this kind of thing they're doing with me and see if that works for you. So I think that's awesome to have you to reach out to. And you have
Thank
a
you.
contact me on here. So if people do want to get in touch with you, I'm sure they can go on there and get it. And you have a lot of good videos on here and that. So hopefully people go. Again, it's aubrey.withgrace.com. Aubrey spelled Aubrey. So aubrey.withgrace.com. Go check it out. It's a very well organized website. I really love the way you've got it all laid out. It's very simple to use. So I hope people go and they check it out. And so I'm
Thank
glad you
you.
came on and explained everything to us, and hopefully you're feeling a lot better now than before. I mean, it's been about 5 6 years since you were diagnosed, and you're looking great. You look like you're doing awesome,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I'm glad to see things are going well for you. And I know you're going to find that job that you want, that dream job that you can do. And are you and
Yeah.
your brother still really close?
Yeah, unfortunately, he lives in Italy, which
Oh,
is really far. So I don't see him that often, but we try to call,
good.
and he's always, cheering me on. And he is insanely smart, insanely cool. I'm always really proud of him.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the thing with our families that we're geographically very far apart, but always
But
we talk
emotionally,
all the time.
mentally, you're all together. So that's all that matters.
Exactly.
And with this
Yeah.
technology these days, you can just pick up a phone and call, or you can Skype or Zoom or anything you want
Yeah.
and get to see everybody. So I think that's awesome. Before we leave, though, do you have any final words you'd like to tell everybody out there? Just anything you'd like to say to anybody who's watching this today?
Yeah, I think I'd say, if you're going through the beginning process of diagnosis, that it gets a lot better. That's what I always tell everyone. And maybe some people don't want to hear that. I did not want to hear any inspirational advice when I was very bitter for a while. And
I
it's
can
normal to
imagine.
be bitter, it's normal to be upset. If you're upset, just be upset. And
Exactly.
then after you're upset, you can choose what to do from there, but it always gets better. You'll learn your body, you'll learn how your body reacts to things, and you'll become more comfortable with it. And if you are really sick all the time, go see a doctor. I know some people do not ever go to the doctor, and I used to be
Yeah.
like that. Just go. Even if it's the most annoying hour and you don't find out anything, just go.
Mhm.
So that's what I always tell everybody. I mean, you know your body and you know when something's wrong.
Definitely. No, very good words to live by. I'm the same one. I usually, even when I have a headache, I don't want to take anything like an Advil or anything. I always
Yeah.
try and see if I can just let it go away on its own and stuff. But if it gets really bad, of course, you take an aspirin or an Advil or something or Tylenol. But no, I'm glad you came on. I think we all learned a lot. I know I learned a lot, and I'm an old man, so I can always learn some new stuff and some new tricks. So I'm glad to see you're doing well. And I think you're very much you're very articulate. You're very good with your communication. So
Thank
your schooling
you.
went very well, of course, and
Happy
I think
about
a
that.
lot can learn from you at such a young age, what you've been through, and still have the high spirits that you do right now, and knowing that I think you're going to go far and you're going to live a long life and you're going to be a very big inspiration for a lot of people out there. So just keep trying and plugging along, and I'm sure you're going to do awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. And if anybody again wants to connect with her, you can get a hold of Aubrey on Facebook and things like that. But also go to her website, aubrey.withgrace.com. Go to her contact page if you want to, and contact her. And contact. Also leave comments below here, because even if you're when you're watching this, put some content. And if you put any questions there, I'm sure Aubrey would be happy to answer them as best as she can. We'll be keeping track on that, so we'll get your questions in that. But thank you for coming on. And again, until next time, we hope you stay great. We hope you empower, motivate, and inspire others to be the best that they can be. And remember, if anybody asks, say the butler did it.